welcome to our panel at Mobile World Congress on 5G testbeds, where we're going to be looking at their research directions for 5G and beyond. I have with me here today a set of international distinguished panelists from various testbed activities from throughout the globe. We have Arturo Azcorra and Monique Calisti from the European region, and John Caywell. He works from InterDigital from the United States. So we'll be covering comparison of testbed activities that are happening. I'm going to give each of them a chance to more fully introduce themselves in just a moment, but let me just first explain why InterDigital is so interested in the panel on 5G testbeds. So InterDigital, we are very focused on our research and development, innovation, prototypes like we see here at Mobile World Congress, and some selected product initiatives. And InterDigital, like so many other companies we have here at Mobile World Congress, have been working on 5G technologies for many, many years. And because of that, we're all interested in what is the big next step to get those technologies into the hands of users and into the industry. And we're very excited that 5G testbeds, we think that's one of the big next steps that we need to go to. So with that, we're excited to hear from our panelists on what are these testbed activities doing, where are they, and what can we expect next. So with that, I'll just kind of go right down the road to start out with. And Arturo, maybe you can tell us what testbed activities have you been involved in, and also please introduce yourself as well.
Okay, so my name is Arturo Azcorra. I'm the director of IMDEA Networks, which is a research lab here in Europe, and I'm also professor at University Carlos III. But the reason for being here in this panel is because I'm the vice president of Photonic Laboratory. Photonic Laboratory is a laboratory of co-creation value involving several academic institutions and big industries like InterDigital and other technology leaders to push forward the technology of 5G into the market from the labs. And that's what I'm doing. Should I answer the technology part, or should we do a round of introduction first?
Let's do a round of introduction, and then we'll dive into some questions after that. Okay. Monique?
Good morning. My name is Monique Calisti, and I'm the director of Martel Innovate. It's a company based in Switzerland that is involved and engaged in several innovation projects working for 5G to become a reality. And I'm very glad to be here because, in particular, I'm working with InterDigital in the context of a European-funded project called FLAME. And within this project, we have been launching in those days an open 5G trial testbeds, which I will be very happy to tell you more about.
Okay, thank you. John?
Good morning. My name's John Caywell. I'm a member of InterDigital's CTO office. I'm a participant in the U.S. Ignite Power platform for advanced wireless research. InterDigital is one of the founding members of the consortium. That's a public-private consortium that was put together to help launch 4 test beds in the U.S. That will actually be used to advance research in 5G wireless technologies.
Okay, thanks a lot. So let's dive into some questions that we have for the panelists. My first one is to talk about the importance of 5G testbeds. So Arturo, maybe you can tell us about what the value is of 5G testbeds and their demonstrators.
Okay, so the 5G technology is beginning to be mature, meaning that it's coming out of the laboratories and the research labs, and we are beginning to see already some prototypes and products. And it's very important to actually show that this is cost-effective, and we should do this linking with the vertical customer, so with the end customer. So it's not just the technology firms themselves, but showing to the actual users of the technology, which is these large customers. We are involved right now in 3 large projects with InterDigital and other leader companies. One is 5G Crosshaul that just finished, 5G Transformer that is starting, and 5G Coral, which is a collaboration with Taiwan, with Far East. These are already having some prototypes that we want to demonstrate, and we don't want to demonstrate them in isolation because this would not be so powerful. What we want is to test them into a large testbed. We have Photonic, which is one such large testbed, and this will couple with other testbeds in Europe and in the US through the efforts of the Commission and National Science Foundation to fund large continental testbeds. In Europe is through a call of proposals called ICT 17 that just closed a few weeks ago, and in Europe is through in the US, it's through a power proposal. And it's essential to showcase to really demonstrate towards the verticals that 5G is not just a technology, but it's a solution. And it's providing big advantages to all the sectors to which it would be capital in the future.
Okay, yeah, it does seem like the verticals are very important for the testbed initiatives. Any other thoughts on the importance of 5G testbeds?
Good.
If I may, I think testbeds are needed both from a technological perspective to understand what's feasible, what kind of key performance indicators can really be supported by the new technologies and solutions. But there's also another dimension, which is the dimension of adoption of the technologies, both in the vertical perspective and also at the level of smart cities initiatives, for instance, that are revolutionizing their services ecosystem thanks to 5G. So I think it's very important to keep in the loop all the players, which will definitely involve also public authorities, as there are going to be many legal implications also in this change. And the testbed are a unique opportunity to actually not only test technologies, but to identify in real world settings what kind of implications also from a legal point of view might arise from deployment of these technologies.
Right.
So in the U.S., the NSF funds over 400 university projects a year focused on wireless technologies, but those technologies don't get exposed or tested at the same scale as a system that's deployed in the field in a wireless test bed, as we're talking about today. So it's important that you have a platform on which you can actually take your designs and your experiments and actually deploy them at scale. There's also 5G, there's a lot of capability baked into 5G and the technologies that are being developed to enable that. But what are the true killer applications that will be able to take advantage of it? So when you deploy at scale, you'll be able to actually try to identify what are those killer applications early. And it's also, when you take and scale your designs and your ideas into a platform that covers a wider area, more people, more users, you might be able to identify earlier more disruptive technologies. So that's kind of another reason why we think these test beds are very important.
Okay, that's great. All right, so let's get into the topic of what makes the test beds very effective. And Monique, maybe you've already mentioned a little bit about the participants being an important piece of it, but what else is it that makes it very important and that can really help 5G technologies take off with their efforts into test beds?
So what I can report is based on the experience that we are building up in Flame, this project that we are working on with InterDigital, but also with other partners across Europe, and that we are trialing now in Bristol and very soon also in Barcelona. So the idea there is to really try to engage all the players in the service value chain creation. So you cannot just provide an infrastructure, you have to provide also a flexible service delivery platform in which not only consumers and users can come and, deploy services, but also small to medium players, business players can come and offer their services. So it's really about creating an open ecosystem, an open environment in which technologies and communities, know-how and services come together. And there are several instruments that we're trying to enforce. So we're trying to open the platform, we're trying to open this test bed for external experimenters, offering also funding for them to join and work with us on a period of 6 to 10, 12 months to really try to improve and test the capabilities of the technology. So I think participation and open customer-facing approaches are really key for 5G to take off, actually.
Okay, thank you.
And the U.S., as part of the Power Initiative, what's really a key ingredient is support of the communities and the cities that these systems are deployed in, having access to the infrastructure, having access to light poles, being able to pull fiber to all the sites and so forth is really important. Also, having the resources available to actually deploy and actually put this thing up and actually have it up and running. And then also, as Monique has mentioned, open access, having sort of the APIs and the user examples and so forth in place so that people can actually use the system so that it's understandable.
Yeah. How about the role of open source? It seems like there's more and more open source activities. You see that as being very important for 5G testbeds?
Yeah, I think open source is going to play a big role. And I think open source is going to play a big role because of the increased softwareization and virtualization of the networks. Because of the high complexity of the control plane, it's going to be very difficult to see an embedded system from a single manufacturer covering all the functions. So we need to do a modular approach heavily based on software. This implies that because of software and standards of interoperation will play a big role, it's a big opportunity for open source initiatives. So we see initiatives like ONOS or Open Daylight or Open Air Interface becoming very, very important, and big commercial customers becoming very interested in them. Formerly, some of these initiatives were considered something for the academic world, not really industry grade. But now I think it's the opposite situation. There is growing interest in them, and on my view, open source will play a strong role in 5G. Of course, manufacturers' proprietary products will still be there and will be very important, but I think that open source will become very, very important.
Okay, great. So let's move the conversation on a little bit to talk about the international comparisons. So we have, since we have an international panel here, we have John from the United States and the Power Initiatives. John, how do you see what's the United States is putting together for 5G testbeds in comparison to what we see in Europe?
So this idea of this at-scale testbed is sort of a new one for the U.S. So historically, the NSF has been investing in small projects, but industry has had their testbeds. But this is the first time there's been sort of a collaborative testbed initiative. So we want to learn from Europe. So Europe has already been doing this. What we see is test beds that have been put together, often focused on applications, areas such as IoT, smart cities, smart industry, things of that nature, and federated a few, across countries. And in the U.S., we're looking to do this such that the plan is to deploy 4 test beds. We want to basically do them or put them together such that the interfaces are common across these different test beds, although each test bed will be focused on a different type of technology set, such as millimeter wave, such as massive MIMO, things of that nature. But we want to be able to make or reuse a lot of the interfaces and technology that allows the community to actually utilize the test beds. Okay.
And from the perspective of the European side, do you see that the U.S. is doing things differently than they have in the past, or is this power effort really a new approach that you're seeing coming from the U.S.?
Well, I think traditionally the U.S. is like more promoting the individual, and Europe is like more promoting the corporation and the group. And in this sense, there is new approach in the U.S. with this power initiative, because it's like a consortium based. So they are trying to assemble a group, not just bottom-up individual initiatives. Both approaches have their own advantages, of course. And in this sense, I think that you can create value from both approaches. In this case, for large testbeds, I think the consortium-based is a better suited. For other initiatives, probably the bottom-up individual is better suited. So I think there are 2 different tools you have to use whenever needed. I think that Europe also has a lot to learn from the US. I'm glad you said you can learn something from Europe, but I'm pretty sure that Europe has a lot to learn from the US also.
Okay.
I wanted to add, too, is that we're hoping, and we're actually starting discussions of collaborating across the Atlantic Ocean. And actually, work that happens in the U.S. Is kind of coordinated with what's happening in Europe. And where it makes sense, we could actually share technology or actually reuse technology so we don't have to reinvent wheels. And just actually follow in the spirit of open sourceness and collaboration and try to work smarter.
Yeah, actually, if I may, There's already a very clear global strategy about 5G developments and adoption. So the big telco operators, manufacturer, industry players, and also governments are already in a very close dialogue for the last few years. We have global events that take place once or twice a year, and they are promoted by big international organizations that gather 5G communities across US, across China, across Japan, across Korea, South Korea, and across Europe. And there's going to be in May in the US, the next global 5G event will be in the US in May. So this will definitely be another opportunity for the players from all over the world to actually gather together and understand how they can better learn from each other's experiences.
Okay, yeah, I think we're all looking forward to a lot of collaboration to help pull 5G testbeds together. So in terms of the technologies that we see coming into these testbeds, with 5G, it's really a brand new set of technologies that we've been looking at, millimeter wave, massive MIMO. But which of these technologies do you think are the most important to be looking at in the 5G testbeds? Any thoughts?
That's a difficult question. I will provide my own personal answer, of course. On my view, the challenge in 5G will be the control plane, because you have to handle in a single network in an homogeneous way really lots of very different challenges. You need to handle different spectrum, Wi-Fi, millimeter wave, small cells, backhaul, fronthaul, optical networks. You need also to integrate computing, because with multi-access edge computing and cloud and fog, which is what we are doing in 5G Coral, you have to integrate inside the network not only the transport of the information, but also the processing of the information. Handling all of this complexity in a cost-effective way, in a secured way, to me is going to be a big challenge. This is part of what we are doing in collaboration with InterDigital, both in 5G Coral and 5G Transformer project, which is try to use the latest technology in softwareization, virtualization, in intelligence from virtual intelligence, to try to have a really well-controlled set of resources. This is what I think will be the challenge, although there are many different challenges, of course.
Yeah, okay. Any other thoughts on the technology?
Well, there's a lot of interesting topics that are going to be explored as part of the deployment of these test beds. There's a lot of interest in millimeter wave and what are the propagation effects, and how does it propagate and how good is it, and can you use it non-line of sight and so forth. So there's a lot of interesting topics, massive MIMO, and how do you do channel estimation, pilot pollution, intercell interference, and all these types of topics that we hear about. With these test beds, we'll actually get to test them, and we'll have to be able to try new ideas to mitigate, the performance degradations that are possible due to the implementation losses.
If I may, I think, they cover pretty much everything that one could mention. But I think that what we are learning and what we are trying to also understand through our experience in Flame is that there is an ever-increasing need to mind the interconnection between the lower networks, let's say, layers, and the more software, middleware plugs that will allow, in fact, more personalized, more agile service delivery. So it's not just a matter of putting together or plugging into an infrastructure that is performant. It's also a matter of orchestrating the different pieces that will allow this personalized, this localized, and this agile service delivery with all the kind of KPIs that we are expecting will be satisfied. So the challenge will be really to merge these technologies from different angles.
Okay. And how about going beyond 5G? Since we had that as part of the title of our test bed, 5G and beyond, is it too early to be talking about technologies going beyond 5G, or do you see some of these technologies are really already going to be beyond 5G? So where do we stand?
Well, I think it's definitely not too early to begin talking about technologies beyond 5G. Development of technologies in information technology field takes more reduced maturity than other fields like bio, which is longer term, but still requires a substantial number of years between the initial research, lab prototypes, standards, and products. 5G has come over a long way already, and we will begin to see first products very early. So 5G is already very close to market, a reality. Still not there, but very close. And definitely we need to begin thinking now what's going to come next. And most labs, academia, and top companies like Into Digital are already beginning to think what's coming next. And I think there are a number of top things that we could discuss.
Right. Is it too early?
It's hard to actually imagine what's beyond 5G, because 5G isn't fully defined yet. But you hear a lot of talk recently, especially about deployment of satellites, many satellite systems, thousands and thousands of satellites being deployed. The integration, like between the terrestrial systems and space-based systems, could be a pretty key topic, I think, in the future. I don't know if it's being adequately addressed today, so maybe that's something that is part of 6G. But other than that, I kind of struggle to kind of figure out what's next after 5G, because we're already, still in the early phases of 5G.
So I will relate very much to what you just said, John. We're involved now in some discussions in our forward-looking perspective, looking at satellite communications and how satellite technologies will integrate with 5G technologies, the terrestrial part. So we're very much looking into that. And next week, actually, in Brussels, on the 7th of March, hosted by the European Commission, there will be a workshop focusing on what comes next, what's going to happen after 5G, actually. Focusing on some spectrum-related aspects, more in particular. But I think this is a big question that several researchers, innovators, and policymakers are now putting on the table.
Okay. And just to start heading towards a wrap-up, what if there was one wish you had for 5G testbeds? Just we'll quickly go down the line here. What would be one wish? Maybe we'll start with John. What would be your wish for 5G testbeds?
So as we've spoken about earlier during this panel discussion, the idea of collaboration and open systems, and really leveraging that so that wheels aren't reinvented, there aren't silos of technologies that don't talk well to each other. Coming up with common interfaces between these different platforms, I think, will be very useful and help to just increase the overall productivity. It'd be kind of a shame to deploy some really capable test beds if they're not usable. So if they're usable and there's a lot of common information that can be shared across how to use these systems, I think that would be a great outcome.
My wish is a disruptive change in the way we experience services, in the way we are accessing services. I truly believe that there is a revolution that is allowing verticals and different kinds of players to have the chance to refine and define the services as they get them offered. And this is really revolutionizing the whole relationship between customers and service providers. And this is where I think most of the changes will happen.
Okay. Arturo?
So, on my view, there is a keyword for this, which is when people ask me many times, what's new about 5G? And they tell, is the radio interface, is more speed, is the control plane? What is the big exciting thing about 5G? And it's difficult to summarize in one word. And after thinking much, I said that it's personalization. So the very different thing between 5G and 4G is that 5G will allow for personalized services. Not personalized for each individual person, but for groups of customers. So you will have personalized services for industry, you will have personalized services for emergencies, personalized services for utilities, for entertainment, and maybe even finer grain for some specific subsectors. This is, to me, the very big difference between with 4G have a very nice service and network, but it's pretty much homogeneous. It's very difficult to differentiate. It's one size fits all. The real challenge is to have a single infrastructure of computing and communications that allows us to offer a totally different perceived service to all these actors. This is what I would like to see in a testbed, which is that verticals really perceive that the network is what they want, and they all want to perceive very different things over a single network. This would be, to me, the real success of 5G, which is personalization.
Okay, that's great to hear. Personalization, I think, will be one of the key things that we'll see different for 5G. So I just want to wrap up and thank the panelists for this valuable information about 5G testbeds. And, I wish you all a very good Mobile World Congress.
Thank you,
Thank
Doug.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.